Hello listeners, Jordan here. I just want to let you know that you can listen to Nighttime early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Include it with Prime. Hello everyone. Before I begin, let me take a second and explain a slight rebranding or reorganization that you'll see on some of my upcoming episodes. You've probably noticed that I structure Nighttime around both standalone stories, like for example Justice for Sia, as well as reoccurring series like Keep Canada Weird, UFOs Above Canada, or the Nova Scotia mass shootings. Well, my regular guest Madelayne Klein and I have been bouncing our collaborations between episodes branded Missing in Canada and some branded as Canadian Gothic. And here's where we get to the rebrand. Just to make it easier for listeners to predict the style and the participants of a Nighttime podcast episode, from this point on, stories that are told by way of a conversation between Madelayne Klein and I will be simply branded as Canadian Gothic. So basically, Canadian Gothic means Jordan and Madelayne Klein are going to be exploring dark Canadian stories. Those dark stories could include missing persons cases, murders, and probably even a lot worse. Also, if you're interested, we'll be broadcasting our live recordings on the Nighttime Podcast YouTube channel every Thursday night at 9:15 p.m. Atlantic Time. So please join us. So yeah, with all that cleared up, let's get into the episode.
You are listening to Canadian Gothic, a series by the Nighttime Podcast.
Hello listeners. This episode is going to take us to the small town of Kipling, Saskatchewan. With a population hovering just around 1,000 people, most of you have likely never heard of this place. And why would we? There's little to know or say about Kipling. Its claim to fame, I guess, is that back in the mid-aughts, a blog was created in which a fella chronicled his journey of trades. He started with one singular paperclip, and after a year of wheeling, dealing, and negotiating, he ended up trading all the way up to a modest 2-story home in Kipling. But as far as its claim to infamy, well, that's what we're going to be getting into here tonight. That story revolves around a rape allegation directed at a respected local physician. On Halloween night, 1992, a 23-year-old woman went to the hospital facing a mental health crisis. The physician on duty, Dr. John Schneeberger, was tasked with handling her care. His care, as it turns out, involved drugging her, raping her, and going to unimaginable lengths to hide his crimes. So let that description be a trigger warning. Tonight, in this episode, I'll be joined by Canadian crime content creator Madelayne Klein to explore the case of Dr. John Schneeberger. Let's get into it.
The town looked up to the doctor. He was a good doctor, and he would never do anything like that.
To end the controversy, Dr. Schneeberger willingly agreed to give blood for a DNA test. The DNA in the blood drawn from Dr. Schneeberger did not match the biological material from Candy's rape test kit.
And I was in shock again. And I said, no, that's impossible. How can this be?
Maddie Klein, fancy meeting you here. How are you doing all the way over there in Saskatchewan somewhere?
Oh, I'm great. I'm, just hanging out.
Your background looks wonderful. Your shelf looks like it's recently been dusted. And you got a new light.
I did. It's orange.
Yeah, I can tell. It's beautifully orange.
Isn't it fabulous?
Yeah, it's like...
It's really the cherry on top to the background.
Of this whole situation. Yeah.
Exactly.
How have you been? What's new? What's going on in your life?
It's been a couple of weeks. And
it has.
I've been thinking all day about what I could tell you what's new today.
Let me give you some, how about some prompts?
Okay.
Tell me one good thing that happened to you over the last week. Like what's one positive thing that happened in your life?
I stayed in all weekend.
It's so positive.
I don't think I left the house once. No, I left the house once. Okay. So that's great. And for me, my house is my sanctuary.
You just taking pictures of your cats for 2 days?
Pretty much hanging out with cats, husband, and life is good.
Well, let me tell you mine. Something good that's happened. Over this past weekend, I had a great experience I don't think I told you about. There was, I love Value Village and flea markets and vintage stuff. I found out that there was this thing happening outside of my city called the Nova Scotia collector convention that had it was kind of like a flea market kind of situation, but it was all vintage toys and collectibles. So think like 1970s, 80s, and 90s toys, figures, GI
Cool.
Joe, all that kind of stuff. So my boys and I went and we bought a whole bunch of random things. My kids are obsessed with Pokemon cards. I buy comic books like a grown nerd, and we got a bunch of stuff. It was an amazing time.
That sounds so cool.
Anyway, that's the intro for this episode. We got to get into a really twisted story, one that I had never heard about until you told me about it, and just maybe a week or two ago. I'm going to get his name wrong every time I say it, but how you live in the same province that the case of Dr. John Schneeberger occurred in.
Very good. Perfect.
Did I get it?
Yep.
So this happened in your province, Saskatchewan. How do you know about this guy? And did you know about it back when this all happened in the 90s?
I remember my mom telling me about it.
Okay.
Because the trial would have been in 99 and I was 6 in 99. And
Okay.
yeah, my mom's always been pretty real with me. So
Wow.
I remember her telling me about this trial, and this doctor,
Okay.
gave fake blood with whatever.
Wow.
And then I forgot about it for
Okay.
a long, long time. Like, I don't know what made me think of it. Actually, I do. And it's very weird because I was at work and we were actually talking about vasectomies. And this case just like flooded back into my mind. And I was like, that's very odd because there's no connection there.
Okay.
But yeah, I was like, oh, okay. But I was like, oh, do you guys, because I was talking to some coworkers, they're like early 40s. And I was like, oh, do you guys remember this case? And then they were like, oh, yeah, I think I do remember that. And I was like, I got to go look more into this. I'm doing this as my next case. Yeah.
And then
So
here we
yeah,
are.
and here we are.
I think I may have heard it mentioned or something, because when you started telling me some of the details, like a doctor or rape accusation, DNA tests that may have been had funky stuff happening with them, I was like, I kind of know. But then when I started reading about it, I watched 2.5 documentaries, I'll say. It blows my mind that this isn't a major story across Canada that everyone knows about. We'll get into the story, but just to set the stage even further, what are your feelings about going to the doctor? Have you ever had a weird experience, a good experience? Do you have a doctor? I know many Canadians don't.
I do. Yeah, I just recently learned that too. But no, I've had the same family doctor for since I was probably 6 or 7.
Really? Okay, you're one of the lucky ones.
Mm-hmm. And she's lovely.
Very few people have that. In Nova Scotia, I don't know what the percentage is, but the wait list to get a family doctor in Nova Scotia, it's just you basically need to show up on death's door at the hospital to see a doctor in this province.
Yes.
It's brutal, it's horrible, and it's when you call a doctor's office, if they don't answer, the voicemail is usually something like, you've reached the office of Dr. Whatever. We're not accepting new patients. Calls related to new patients will not be responded to. If you're a patient, leave a message after the beep. That's kind of how it works. But I'm so lucky. We're like you. I have a family doctor in Halifax. And his practice isn't in a big clinic or at the hospital. He has a small little practice where he is the only doctor in this practice. It's like him and his receptionist. That's it. And it's the kind of thing where if I want an appointment, I can usually call and see them, or for my kids or whatever, I can usually see him the day I call within a couple hours in most cases, where I have friends who are have been trying for years to get access to a doctor and instead go to these medical clinics. But I think the reason I wanted to get into that to start is just because a doctor has this unique role in society, maybe unlike any other position, unlike a politician or anything. People rely on their doctor and depend on their doctor. And if you have a relationship with your doctor, it's so important to you, because when push comes to shove, I don't know, maybe you will pray that, things get better, but you will very likely call your doctor and be like, you're the one who's going to fix me in this. A doctor's an important position. And the story we're going to get into, it leans on that a little bit because it involves accusations against a doctor. in a small town who has a great reputation, and despite evidence to the against them and a very strong case at times, you'll hear as we get into it, um, people seem to just not want this doctor to fall from grace, I guess we can put it. We'll set the scene with there's really this case that we'll discuss. It revolves around two people. Of course, there's Dr. John Schneeberger. Do you want to tell us a little bit about him, and then I'll introduce the other player to the story?
So Dr. John was born in Zambia in 1961. He got his medical credentials in South Africa and then immigrated over here in 89 into Kipling, Saskatchewan. To my knowledge, he just went, I don't know how he ended up there, but he did.
When people come from out of the country into Canada, I'm always surprised by where they end up. A lot of new immigrants end up in Sydney, Cape Breton, where I'm from. And I'm always like, how, if I meet someone, I'm like, how in God's name did you find out about this like blip on the underarm of the country? And they usually say, I'm not sure. But do you know Kipling? Do you know this place?
I know of it. I've probably driven through it. It's pretty close. Like I think it's only 2 hours away.
What if you were to describe Kipling from your point of view? What is it? What kind of place is this that this happens in?
Oh, like small town, maybe three main roads and a hockey rink, and that's it.
Okay.
Maybe a curling rink.
But I think, and I also think that's important, because I have a feeling if you could find out about how many doctors were in Kipling in the era that this happens in, the early 90s, there's probably only a few doctors, and that's maybe a part of the reason why he was able to push this as far. But anyway, we're in Kipling. What else about him in the 90s what was his life like?
He married in 91, married a woman with 2 children from a previous marriage or relationship. I'm not clear on that. And then they had 2 daughters of their own. So yeah, they were living their best lives in the early 90s.
Yeah. And so Dr. Schneeberger, he has his wife Lisa, her 2 children from a prior marriage, and then the 2 children they had together. On the other side of the story is quite the opposite lifestyle, I guess, as we have people. If you read about this case online, she's often referred to as Candy. And I think the reason for that is in the early coverage of this story, it seemed like she was using the name Candy to be anonymous. But I've also seen more recent articles and documentaries where she's using her full name, which is Candace. It seems like something must have changed over the years and she's comfortable using the name Candace. So that's what I'll use. But at the time that this happened, Candace was a 23-year-old single mother. She was raising a baby on her own. And to make that happen, she was working nights at a local gas station. I wouldn't say she had a bad reputation, but she was known as someone who would, I guess like a partier is how I would put it. Someone who was living a life, young girl, raising a baby on her own, working at a gas station, as I said. So those are the 2 people that the story centers around. But the event itself will play out over years, but it starts on Halloween night in 1992. So what happens is it starts with Candace is at work at the gas station. I believe as she's getting off work, her boyfriend is outside the gas station that she was working at, and they get in what's described as an explosive argument, and it involves around him being with another woman. So whatever happens, they're yelling at each other. The boyfriend and a friend leave in a truck. Candace is out of her mind, upset, unable to control herself and calm herself down. And she seems to realize that she's going through something like maybe a breakdown or something is what I'm kind of imagining that to be as you would describe it. And she decides to leave the gas station and go to the hospital where a good friend works. It's the Kipling Memorial Hospital. She goes hoping to see a friend there who I believe was working as a nurse or an orderly is how I saw it described. I don't really know what the difference would be, but regardless, it turned out that her friend wasn't working that night, but the other nurses on duty that encountered 23-year-old Candace, who was seemingly at the point of a breakdown, realized something was wrong, and they coaxed her. Well, I don't know, coaxed her, but they encouraged her to stay a little while and see a doctor to see if if everything was going to be okay. She agrees to do it, and the doctor that she was going to see is not a stranger to her.
Dr. John Schneeberger, and he actually was the doctor that delivered her baby.
And I believe just like a year prior, like at the time that this happened, she had a baby. And anyone who has kids, I have two, the relationship you form with the doctor that delivers the baby is this like very unique and deep thing where there's so much trust. They see you at your most vulnerable, especially a woman. Me as the man sitting there like useless. I still felt it, but I'm sure for the woman who's actually doing the delivery, the relationship you have with the doctor that's making that happen and getting you through that is something. So when I hear this story, I think the amount of trust she must have had in this man perhaps is a part of what made her say like, yeah, like I'm going through something. I'm going to stay at the hospital and spend some time, and, talk to the doctor that just helped me through the most stressful thing I've ever been through.
I never thought of that.
When we get to how this plays out, it's not just like a stranger. Maybe it's not her family doctor, but it's someone who just helped her again through the most traumatic, probably most painful day of her life. I'm willing to bet. But talk us through the night, and I'm excited to hear you describe it because I know you know a lot of the medical terms and devices and stuff that come up in this section of the story.
Well, so Candy is in the room. The doctor comes in and he notices that she's upset, and she explains to him what's going on, and he suggests a sedative to her, but he ends up injecting her with a drug called Versed, or I know it as midazolam. And midazolam is a pre-anesthetic drug that is supposed to like just slow your brain function, let you sleep. And when I originally, because I worked in an operating room for like 5 years, I'm not a nurse, but when I asked a nurse, like, what's this drug? What are we using this for? All they said was, oh, that's what makes you forget.
Ooh, okay.
That's what my nurse friend said. That's the drug that makes you forget.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So when I typed in Versed to Google and then found out that another name for it was midazolam, I was like, oh, that stuff. Because I've seen this drug in action, and it doesn't knock you out. Mm-hmm. It's just a pre-anesthetic. And
it seems like it would be atypical to use that for someone who's going through what seems to be like a mental health episode where she just needed to calm down. This is a pretty extreme way to do it. Like it put her.
And not only that, but I don't think she had an IV. I've only ever seen this stuff be given intravenously. So did he just stick a syringe in her and was like?
I'm pretty sure she referred to it as a shot. He gave me a shot, and a shot to me is a needle of stuff.
Right. So I'm just like, I'm not sure if that's how you should be like giving that out, but I don't know. I still, regardless, he gave her this shot.
I'm going to go with your gut rather than this doctor's, your opinion on it. But he gives her this shot, which according to her statements that she made, it seemed to pretty much make her a living zombie where she was conscious, but like in a huge daze, unable to move or even make a sound, like basically like a living zombie just stuck to the table is how I'm imagining it.
Right. Actually, I can't believe I didn't think of this until just right now. I got my wisdom teeth out many years ago and I was sedated, and I don't remember anything except for one part where I like remember seeing the light, and then they were talking to me and they said my name. But so I like totally understand, I think, what Candy was feeling. Mm-hmm. Or at one point, I should say. Mm-hmm. Just the anesthetic part of it. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, you're definitely there, and mm-hmm. you can, and I remember very clearly what happened when I was sedated.
Yeah.
Just for that little bit, but still.
That comparing what she was going through to a dental procedure, something she did as well. Because Candace, in the documentary I saw, she said, what I remember about being unconscious is like when you get a tooth pulled and your gums are asleep or whatever, you don't feel the pain, but you feel some pressure. When she's unconscious or semi-conscious on this table, she described not really remembering what's happening, but feeling pressure in like her groin and abdomen. She remembered the doctor being in the room. She remembered pressure, but that's really all she seems to recall from the actual night, Halloween night, when this incident happened.
Well, I believe she said she like remembers she could feel her pants being pulled down.
Okay.
And then, she could feel pressure. And then she actually rolled over and saw Schneeberger leave the room.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
This medicine, it made it so that she was unable to leave the hospital. So she spends the night in the hospital and has a weird encounter the next morning. She realizes that, whatever drug she was given was something heavy duty. And she asks Schneeberger in the morning, she says, "What did you give me last night, doctor?" And he says, why do you ask? Did it give you some wild dreams?
Ugh, that just makes my skin crawl.
But she's already at this point, the next morning, she's putting it together that something happened the night before. She's not feeling good about it. And she does something that I think really saves the story.
You're right. She's had the foresight to put her underwear into a plastic bag. And then when she went home, she immediately told her parents. And then they also did the right thing by taking her to Regina to get a rape kit done.
And Regina must be the nearest city to this.
It's got to be the nearest big city.
Okay. I could never imagine how this would feel, but I think if you're at the point that you're actually putting your underwear in a plastic bag to preserve them, you have to be
pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So despite all the medicine and fogginess that went aside from that, she was certain what happened. They brought her to Regina to have this rape kit done, and the doctors or the nurses or whoever does the rape kit did find traces of semen on her clothes, on her underwear, as well as inside of her. And it was obvious something had happened the night before because she had told them, "I hadn't had intercourse, I think, in weeks." So it's, already she's like, "He raped me last night." Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no way this is no.
And that's where the trouble really starts. First of all, in a small town like Kipling, a 23-year-old single mother, semi-employed, makes an accusation of rape taking place at a hospital by a trusted doctor who's on duty. And not even alone, there was other like nurses and stuff kind of around when this was said to happen. It wasn't the climate for those situations, I think, maybe was different than it was now, because not a lot of people seem to believe her other than maybe her parents and her herself.
Right. There was, major public doubt.
Accusations that maybe she was in love with him and had this unrequited love, so tried to sabotage him, or maybe she was going after him for money because she's a kid without much money. So maybe she's hoping he'll like offer her money. And that's like what people were thinking.
Yeah. And like that was even before any investigation or anything happened. So like, you can imagine when everything's said and done and whatever, they said he didn't do it at one point. They were like, "Oh yeah, no, for sure. She's lying." Like,
well, it would be if it wasn't for the evidence she had, like if she didn't get that rape kit and all that stuff done right away, it would be, and if it became a battle of her word versus his word, it would be tough because he's like a trusted doctor in a hospital. There was nurses on duty that were around as this was said to happen. It would be a very uphill battle. Luckily, she had the rape kit done, so she has a sample of the DNA of the person whose semen was found on and inside her. She says it's the doctor. He said it wasn't him. So it's a pretty clear next step. The police meet with him and take his blood for a DNA test. And that's where things start to get interesting. The first time they do it. And I say the first time, there's a couple blood tests in this case. The first time they do it, I believe he does it willingly all 3 times. I don't know if any of the 3 were actually like court ordered he had to do it. I think each time.
No, they were all voluntary.
Yeah. So when the accusations came, Dr. John Schneeberger says, like, I didn't do it. I will prove my innocence. He first offered, like, I will take my blood and bring it down here. And they're like, no, we want to see you do the test. So he comes down, and he's in a room with, like, I think there's a police officer and a nurse who does blood stuff all the time. And she's the one who actually puts the needle into a vein in his arm. He's sitting there, and there's video of it. I've watched the video of his blood tests. Doesn't look like anything weird's happening. And she injects it in his arm, takes a vial of blood out. Everything seems fine. He thanks them and leaves. When they do the DNA test on the blood that was withdrawn on his arm, it is not a match for the DNA on her rape kit, which is a big twist. Candace, she says, there's no way. It was him who did it. Something's up. He must have given fake blood or did something.
Well, and DNA was still new at this point. So she was like, let's do this again.
Yeah.
Maybe it was tampered with.
They do a second DNA test after these accusations with another blood test. It works the same way. And usually I believe they will prick a fingertip, but he didn't want to do that. Do you know the reason why he wouldn't allow them to prick the fingertips?
He told them he had some sort of disease that would bruise his fingertips if you took blood from them. Anyone's going to bruise when you take blood.
But on your fingertip, it's going to be, if you had some disease where you bruised easy, it'd be more, I guess maybe you wouldn't want it on your fingertip. But I think the big thing here, though, is that since these were voluntary tests, they were like, oh, whatever, like, as long as we can get one from you, like, you're here taking your time out of your day. So
exactly.
The first one comes back, not a match. He agrees to another second one because Candace is still pushing it. He did it. I want an investigation. Something went wrong. Do another. He agrees to the second under those same terms. Take it from my arm, not my fingertip. Also comes back as negative. But here's what's interesting. She, firmly believing in her position that he raped her and that the DNA, that there was something hokey going on, she hires a private investigator. And I think it's this private investigator that manages to break the case. It actually happens during a third blood test that they get the bad doctor to do. He's coming down to give a third one. And so they know where he's going to be. The private investigator goes to the clinic or the lab or wherever it was he was going to be giving blood. And when the doctor goes in the building, the private investigator goes to check out his car. Fortunately, Schneeberger doesn't lock his doors, so the private investigator just hops in the car. I think
it's Saskatchewan. The keys are probably in the ignition.
Oh, really? Is that what it's like there?
Oh, yeah.
When he goes in, he takes a couple hair samples from the headrest and a stick of chapstick with the plan of, like, something's up with this guy's blood tests. Let's do our own DNA test. And Candace is paying for all this, which I think is also something. She's just a young lady, single mother, who is managing this battle on her own against the powers that be. I think the police are probably on the fence about who they believe, but a lot of people believe the reputable doctor who's serving the community in a unique way that a doctor would. However, the private investigator gets this stuff. The hair follicles they get don't have enough root to take a DNA sample from, so they were useless. But the stick of chapstick, there's like a DNA sample or whatever left behind from being rubbed over his lips. Candace pays to have that checked, a DNA test done on that. And sure enough, it matches with her rape kit, unlike the blood he's been given, which is, that must have been a huge moment for them.
But they can't use that evidence because it was obtained illegally.
Right. So it's just like, we know, but we can't. But
also, they can't prove that chapstick was Schneeberger's. It was just in his car.
But I think it's enough that they can take it to the police and they'd be like, listen, we went in his car, we took his stuff. You can't use this in court, but He is absolutely the guy. Something is going on with the blood tests. They're failing. And in fact, we should also say the third blood test he did, and like we're kind of compressing the story. This happened over a couple years, but the third blood test he did, the nurse who administered it, again, she's sitting there touching his arm, sticking the needle in it like, just like any of us would, up close and personal. But when she withdraws the blood from the vial of blood, and I've seen video of this as well, she says like, like it doesn't look fresh.
Ugh.
Something's up with this.
The vein was larger, or appeared much larger than I would have expected. And I thought that was a little unusual.
She tries another tube, but still has trouble.
Sometimes the vacuum is poor in them and would not pull the blood out of the individual's arm.
Eventually, she was able to extract a sample. Afterwards, the nurse was puzzled.
It's a little strange in that, like the blood doesn't look really kind of fresh. I don't know.
But she doesn't like call him on it. She just assumes, I guess he just doesn't have fresh blood. In that DNA test, the third one that they did, the one that was being done while they were going in his car, that they couldn't, when they sent that away for DNA testing, it couldn't even give a result because it was too like, I don't know what the word
was. It was just too poor, like too poor quality,
degraded,
yeah,
decomposed. I don't know.
Well, that in another interview, that nurse or phlebotomist or whoever, she said, I had never seen blood that looked like that come from a living person.
Mm-hmm. Needless to say, the police at this point, I think, are probably pretty sure he did it. He did his 3 tests, though, and people were there witnessing it, so they have no case against him. In 1994, 2 years after the event happened, they closed the case. They're like, we can't get him.
He gave blood 3 times. DNA's telling us it's not him.
And I could see how that, like, I haven't been able to find any, but I imagine the news reports and stuff at the time could have been written in a way that made her seem like a nut and him seem like
absolutely
like that poor doctor going through all this, voluntarily giving blood, clearing his name 3 times.
Oh, and yeah, just the runaround this girl's giving him, and imagine.
Yeah, it's not hard to. I could see how this could happen. The initial case against Schneeberger from Candace, who was sure he was guilty, who had a private investigator who all but proved it, but using means that were not able to be brought into court. The case was closed. However, several years later, in 1997, I think everybody involved in the initial investigation was about to get some pie on their face in the worst possible way. And I think if you're a police officer or an investigator, the worst thing that could possibly happen, I can only imagine, is if you let someone get away with a crime and then they do it again to someone even more vulnerable, and you have to then kind of double back and double check your work. What happens in April 1997? You want to talk us through this?
In April of 97, John's then 15-year-old stepdaughter tells her mom, John's wife, that John had been coming into her room, drugging and raping her too, for 2 years since she was 13.
Mm-hmm. And she had evidence as well in the form of condom wrappers, I think.
Yeah, she brought her mom into her room, and there was a condom wrapper still in her bed.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah, so thankfully her mom believed her right away, reported it. They found in his home office a box of needles and drugs and condoms.
And we should also say that his wife, Lisa is her name, she was completely supportive of him during the initial accusations made by Candace.
Totally.
But of course, when your 15-year-old daughter comes to you with this, and the tables have turned completely at this point.
Well, and I guess her mom, Lisa, asked her, why didn't you come tell me sooner? And she said, well, you didn't believe Candace. Why would you believe me?
Oh.
That's
That's awful, but I think I can understand that.
Oh, total. And a 13-year-old, like their brain isn't developed yet. I can't imagine going through that. I can't imagine going through that at 30, let alone as an adolescent.
That when this was reported to the police, they searched his home, and of course, as you described, they found that box with the needles and medicine and condoms. Was it the same medicine or the same drug they found that he had used on Candace? Do you know that they found in this box?
I don't know if it was only midazolam, but they found the midazolam in there.
Okay, so it was at least and
at least.
Oh yeah, because that points at like he's using this for that purpose, and it's like his go-to. But now things are different. Again, we've made it clear that the initial blood tests that Dr. John Schneeberger gave to the police were initially voluntary. So he had a little bit of choice as to where they stuck the needle and where they didn't. This time he does not have that choice. And they're going to do it on his fingertip. When he gives blood, they do it. They take hair follicles, which you can get DNA from the root. They do a mouth swab for his saliva, and again, the blood from the fingertips. All three are a different result than the prior tests. It's a different person. This person matches Candace's original rape kit. Obviously, Dr. John Schneeberger has found a way to give fake blood despite the nurse being on top of him, up close and personal, an expert in it, was tricked sticking a needle into his arm. We will later learn that what he was doing, this bizarre trick where he had a vial of another patient's blood, a male patient. He had the vial of blood up the sleeve of his shirt. And then he had a tube coming from that vial of blood that he must have cut himself in the arm and slid the tube under his skin all the way down his arm. So the tube looked like a vein.
It's called a Penrose drain, and it's just a little rubber tube. And it's designed to be placed under the skin to drain a wound. I don't know. Yeah. So he filled a little plastic tube or rubber tube full of another man's blood, a patient, and surgically planted it into his right arm. And like, I'm trying to figure out how he did this. So it's if you're listening, you can't see, but so it's just like a long tube. So you would have to make an incision up around your bicep, no?
Because I guess.
Because you would need to feed it down to your, like where your veins are. And you would have to have it high enough so that you could have your sleeve cover it. And yeah, bizarre.
Yeah. I don't to me, that seems completely insane. If someone's like, Jordan, you're going to jail for 25 years and your reputation will be ruined and you'll be done forever, or you can take a tube and like coax it down your arm under your skin, I'd just be like, I guess I'm dead then. I'm done. I couldn't imagine doing that.
I guess where there's a will, there's a way. I'd like to know what this guy would score on the psychopath test, because I bet you this guy's a psychopath.
Absolutely. Sure. There's no way you could, given the position.
Who does that?
The position that he was in, to have a patient come in having a mental health crisis, and you had just delivered her baby, and your thought is like, I'm going to drug and have sex with her tonight. And then when she realizes it, your next step is like, well, I'm going to put a fake vein in my arm and fill it with another patient's blood, and I'm good to go.
I guess
this is some twisted stuff that he has going on. We'll just spend a minute on his trial, because he's eventually charged with Candace's rape and drugging her, as well as like obstruction of justice or something for tricking them with the fake blood. And then he's also charged with the sexual assault of his then 13 and 15-year-old stepdaughter, like through that period, one stepdaughter from the ages of 13 to 15 at least. When he goes to trial, he continues to double down on his innocence. His original accusation is that Candace wanted money, so she broke into his house and got a blood sample or something? What was it that he
told them about the tube, but
Mhm.
he said it was self-defense
Oh, yes.
because
He admitted to the two, but there was a reason why.
yes. And he said it was because Candace broke into his house, located and stole a used condom out of the garbage, and to try and frame him.
Oh, and that's why he took this unusual step of using
Yeah.
another. Okay.
I would have been
Wow.
kicked out of the courtroom. I would have just been in tears laughing at this clown. Like, oh my God.
But I'm always like interested in when these people who are obviously guilty, if they don't plead guilty, they need to find some outlandish way to say like, well, here's what happened. And they got
I
to make
guess.
everything kind of work. And it's always this crazy story.
And hope they got a damn good lawyer.
Yeah, who can sell it?
Yeah.
In his case, so his story is that she wanted money. She broke into his house, got a condom out of the garbage, and was going to use it to say he raped her. So he put a fake vein in and tricked these tests to get it as self-defense. Like that is pretty wild. It's like, come on, buddy.
It's insane.
The jury does not buy, or the judge or jury or whoever convicted him doesn't buy his crazy theory. He is found guilty of sexual assault and administering a nauseous substance for candy and the teenage stepdaughter. He didn't, and then he got the obstruction of justice charge for candy because of the fake vein and all that stuff. But despite, like, I think people who are listening to this that don't know the story are like, oh my God, this is completely nuts. But despite everything that this evil son of a bitch did, he got like a very light tap on the wrist. When you read his sentence, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but he got parole after 4 years. Which, like, is that not insane given what he did, and given again the extenuating circumstances of the fact that he's a doctor in a position where he can put people under, and I just feel like 6 years is the lightest sentence possible.
It's unfathomable. Like,
and against a child that he was raping for years.
well, exactly. That's what I said. I said, he's not just a rapist. He's a pedophile.
Yeah.
Like, what a slap in the face to the victims, because you can face up to 5 years just for obstruction. So who's doing the sentencing here? Like,
And then
yeah.
And then another layer to this too is for Candace's point of view. She's been yelling from the mountains that this guy did it, but he's got away with it. And now she's like, at the only way she gets justice is as a result of him continuing to do it to a child, which there must be a ton of emotions that come with that.
And we don't know how many others he did this to. How many women has he done this to that have no memory of it and think everything's fine?
Here's my thought. If he all but got busted by Candace, when Candace came forward, he only got away with it by like the skin of his teeth. Yet he still continued to do it years later with the same drug and using, I'm assuming, the same kind of method with a child. There's no way in my mind that he didn't do this to other patients before or after. Yeah. It's such an extreme crime that it just doesn't seem like something you just randomly do. Like that's something that he's been doing, I think.
Well, and that's like textbook narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
To get away with it, like you said, by the skin of his teeth, and then keep doing it.
Yeah, it's the whole thing with that he was able to trick the nurses with that fake vein. And when you watch one of the early documentaries, it's called Forensic Files, that covered this case. They used a lot of video footage of him actually giving the blood test. And there's one spot where there's this one moment where the nurse has her back to him, and she's doing something at a table and the camera's pointed at him, and you see him kind of adjust his arm, and you can see where the vein is kind of, or where like the tube is kind of going in his arm. So it's like, if any time during these three procedures had taken his blood, if his shirt had to just twisted slightly the wrong way, they would have saw it. But then again, if they didn't, if him giving like a dead man's DNA, dead man's blood basically wasn't a dead giveaway. I don't know. Like, I, I don't,
Well,
I,
and
I feel
I
like
guess
there's,
the nurse said that like she, she feels for the vein, and she said like it felt kind of large, but also this would never even cross anyone's mind.
oh, yeah, absolutely not.
So they wouldn't think anything of it.
Hmm. Um, to get through the end of the story, he's found guilty. He gets 6 years in prison, paroled after 4. Of course, he had his medical license stripped. His wife divorced him, of course, and and I think more importantly, she reported him to immigration authorities, um, in putting pressure on them to like get this guy out of Canada. Eventually, he was deported and stripped of his Canadian citizenship. But
Well,
there's
he lied on his because he raped Candace in 1992 and got his citizenship in 1993.
oh
And
yes,
he lied on his application and to the judge and said that he wasn't the subject of an investigation when he was.
yes, that's right. One of the questions on the immigration whatever papers when he got his citizenship asked that, and he said no. I guess they didn't look into it enough, didn't catch it, and a part of his wife reporting him, I think, was what led them to realize he lied on the application, and that was a part of the way they got him out of the country. Um, One part of the story, I hope you know this part better than me, but somehow through all this, his wife ended up getting fined. Now ex-wife Lisa ended up getting fined $2,000 for contempt of court, and it had to do with like the custody or visitation with his children. Because again, she had 2 kids from a prior marriage, and then they had 2 kids together. What happened with the children?
So they had 2 daughters together who were 5 and 6 at the time. And for whatever reason, a judge like court ordered visitation at the prison. And when Lisa was like, no, and didn't take the girls, she got fined $2,000 for contempt of court.
Wow, I'd pitch in and pay that for
Right?
her.
Like,
Yeah.
oh my God. She did, I guess, eventually obey the court order, but
Yeah, you don't really have a choice with those things.
yeah, that's true.
I would love to know what that situation is now between him and his children, because he eventually he spent some time, I believe, in Regina working construction, and then was deported back to South Africa, I believe. And as far as we can tell, that's where he's at now. But this whole like his deportation, that just like people maybe believed him in the beginning, the deportation was also a battle. There was a large letter writing campaign where, despite all of this stuff being true, him giving the fake blood, molesting the child, and raping a patient, there was a letter writing campaign where people tried to get him to be allowed to stay in Canada by writing to, like, I don't know, government politicians and such.
I think they just wanted to like give him more time so that he could say goodbye to his kids. And it worked because he was ordered to deport in December and he didn't get back to South Africa until July of 2004.
Wow. And not only did they do a
Right?
letter writing campaign, there was also a large party to say goodbye. What kind of position do you need to
Like,
have in the community where you can do this and people are still like, we don't want you to leave. Let's have a party to say goodbye
I'm
to
just
this.
picturing like this old boys club of like
Oh,
white
like
collared
like like
losers.
satanic pedophiles, like this large group of them.
Exactly. Ugh. Yeah.
Um, I can't
Like
fathom
imagine sticking behind someone like that.
that would be a very hard place to stick. But people did it, and people in that
And
community,
do it.
yeah, people in that community knew who they were, and yeah. He leaves to South Africa in '04. He lives with his mother. He tried to get, within 3 weeks of arriving in South Africa, he applied for a medical license in South Africa.
Psychopath.
Absolutely. They never had the chance to decline it
Heck.
because he withdrew it before they had a chance to decline it. There must have been some smoke or some red
Thank
flag that they
God.
were looking into him.
I wonder
Um,
if he just gained clarity and was like, oh, I'm an asshole. And I shouldn't do that.
I feel like his thing would be like, it may look worse for me in the future if I get it declined, and I think they're on to me or something. I'm going to withdraw it.
Totally.
So there's no decline, and I'm going to regroup. And to this, as far as we can tell, it seems like in South Africa, his brother has been a strong supporter of, my brother, like he may have done something wrong, but he's a good guy. He should be working as a doctor. And he does have support of family in South Africa, but it seems.
I think his brother works in Ohio.
Oh,
I looked
really?
into him. He's a cardio surgeon in Ohio.
Oh,
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 I googled the shit out of him.
there you go. But she's on to you.
I was like, I want to see what Bill looks like.
Yeah. But then doctor, now just John Schneeberger, is like expelled from Canada. So he will not be back here. But I wasn't able to find anything about this guy after, say, 2005-ish. Like he seems to have disappeared.
Yeah, he's flying under the radar, that's for sure.
And that said, oddly enough, in all of our search, you and I had been talking about this. There's another man named Dr. John Schneeberger. And if you Google this doctor who did this horrible stuff, the rapist doctor, you'll find all these hits about another doctor with the same name in Montana, who I don't know if he was running for like mayor or Congress or something. He's like this,
something like that.
Just this like kind of political guy with like a pretty big internet presence and a lot of his photos and interviews and stuff. But if you look at him, he even looks like Dr. John the rapist, but it's two different people. And the way I figured that out is just the not rapist Dr. John Schneeberger has like a large mole above his eyebrow and a thick, like kind of American accent.
It was the accent that really like sold it for me. But yeah, I'm face blind, so like I tried to compare the photos and I was like,
they had similar features. So I was even like, as I'm reading, I was like, whoa, is this guy now like
one photo was from 1992. I don't know. Did he age gracefully? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that this other Dr. John Schneeberger, given like the uniqueness of a name, I'm surprised like every single thing on the internet that he does doesn't start with like, by the way, not that one.
Like his Instagram bio should be not the rapist.
I'm not the yeah.
Well, and it's like this poor guy, because when you Google Dr. John Schneeberger, this guy's recent photo pops up with a little write-up underneath. Like it's not the same little box, but the write-up underneath is about the rapist John Schneeberger. Like this poor guy,
he certainly knows that he has
same
name. It's a very unique name, but I guess
right.
The problem is John is so common. So Schneeberger is an uncommon last name in North America, but John is so common that if you have 25 Schneebergers, there's a pretty good chance two of them may be John or Mike or something.
And I also read that his real name was or maybe his first name was Stephen, and he may have gone by that. So of course I'm searching like Stephen Schneeberger, but I mean John, Stephen, what's same diff. Like it's a popular name. So
well, so in this story, I think the big things that I think are notable about it is just how evil and manipulative and deliberate the doctor was in drugging and raping victims and covering his tracks. That's shocking. To only get 6 years in prison, absolutely an injustice in my mind.
And to serve 4 of them.
Yeah, it's like, come on. And you also, just like you couldn't convince me that he didn't do this to other people besides his stepdaughter and his patient Candace, I would be shocked to learn he didn't do it again after in South Africa somewhere.
Absolutely. I totally agree, because people like that don't change and they can't be rehabilitated, and they have like this weird God complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not like to compare it with, say, like thievery, it's not like he went into a store and stole an expensive piece of merchandise and left. What he would have done was organize this elaborate heist that involved like a train and, tunnels and a bomb, and, and like
Ocean's 11
through the lasers to avoid detection. Like it's very elaborate what he went through, and high pressure, like to go in and give these blood tests with a nurse right in front of you. It's just so over the top that
Yeah,
it's
premeditated, over the top. Ugh.
it's not a 4 years in prison. This guy's gonna be fine. He's over that.
Like and our listeners before we said the sentence are probably waiting for like a 25-year sentence, life without the chance of parole for 15 years.
That would seem appropriate.
Right? Even 10 for me would be low.
I've heard
10
this.
would be better.
Yeah, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard from multiple people that at least the perception is that if there's a chance you'll be extradited, like kicked out of the country that of Canada, that you're more apt to get a shorter sentence and get parole quicker, knowing that they're just going to boot you out. So I wonder if he got parole after his wife Lisa had reported him to immigration authorities, and the writing was on the wall that we can get him out of prison and get him out of the country and not give this guy better care than our seniors get in this country.
Right. Well, I know now that that's the law. If you are an immigrant here and whatever, you're in jail, as soon as you're out, you're deported. Like there's no, like, you're out. And lots of inmates actually like try and act up to stay in the country. They want to stay in jail so they can stay here.
Well, they probably have to get it pretty good. Dental, medical treatment, full cable in there, all these little craft night. But what I wonder though is like, are you more likely to get paroled quicker if there's the chance to extradite you, like get you out of the country? Like, let's say if it would make sense.
Like, it would just make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just wonder if it's all connected, because it's like the parole board of Canada is not like the immigration people. Like, but I wonder if there's any kind of they must have to communicate in some way, because when someone gets paroled, there's going to be like immigration people outside the prison to collect them and get them out of the country. So there would be some communication. I just wonder. I've wondered about that a lot.
Well, then they're blacklisted from entering.
Yeah, as they should be. This guy should not be ever in his life be dealing with patients or people that are vulnerable.
Feel happiness. He should never. Nothing good should ever happen to this man, ever. He should feel nothing but misery for the rest of his life.
How much of a rock star, though, does Candace come out?
I love this woman. Like, she did not give up. She was so determined. She was like, over my dead body, I'm going to prove this. And
she was only 23. So that's a pretty big battle to take on. It's like, I'm like, the doctor raped me, I'm going to take him down. I'm going to hire a private investigator. I'm going to hound the police, and I'm not going to give up.
That is just wonderful. And thank God she did. But you know what? Even, in her best efforts, the case was still closed.
Yeah. And in her best efforts, it didn't protect his daughter or his stepdaughter, which is, I'm sure I don't know. She probably felt a lot of emotions, but there was nothing she could have, like, she did. I would confidently say she did more than most people would.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, no, she did everything right.
And if you watch the documentaries, there, especially the Forensic Files one that she's in, they interview her under the name Candy, and she's like cocky as hell.
She's the best.
Yeah, and at one point in filming the documentary, they kept the cameras running, but she actually got a call. I don't know if it's from a family or whatever, but someone called her while she's like being filmed for this documentary to let her know that he had his parole denied at one point or something.
Yeah. So I think that would have been in 2001. That was 2001.
So it was probably, like 2 or 3 years into his sentence.
She was so happy.
Yeah. I like.
Well, I couldn't imagine.
She was crass, though. I don't know if crass is the right word. She was intense. Like in the documentary, she was so like, just as you described, she's like, I was going to get this guy. And
matter of fact.
Yeah. At times she came off a little strong, but then at the same time, I'm like, man, this person is a warrior. He absolutely picked the wrong person to do this to.
The worst person.
Yeah. What I think about this, though, is how is there not a massive lawsuit against the prison, against the hospital? Like, because it's if she
I have
went,
so many questions about this hospital and the night in question. I know this was 30 years ago, and I know this was in like small town Saskatchewan,
Mhm.
but like healthcare, and this is coming from the point of view of, someone A, that works there, and B, has, been a patient. You had spare beds in the hospital to just like convince a patient to stay.
Yeah, that
And
doesn't
like,
happen nowadays.
oh no. Or like in the emergency room, they're like, are you sure you don't want to stay and see a doctor? Oh my goodness. Now if they're like, oh, you think you're fine? Later.
Yeah. Do you need one of the
Like,
janitors to carry you to your car?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I just, yeah, I'd love to know what this hospital was like, because yeah, it couldn't have been busy. I remember on one of the documentaries, they said that the only other man in the entire hospital was a man whose wife was giving birth. And he was with his wife the whole time. There was no time he wasn't accounted for. So this couldn't have been the man to rape Candy. But I was like, you could track down how many men were in the hospital at a specific time.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
I forgot about that because there was some discussion of like someone raped her, but Dr.
Who?
Schneeberger, his DNA didn't match from that blood test. So like, who else? There was only one other man in the hospital, and it wasn't him. But yeah, I think we could never know because it would take him telling us the truth, Dr. John Schneeberger telling us the truth. But I wonder if a part of her ability to stay and get this room, I wonder if it had something to do with him being like, this is what I'm going to do tonight to her. The doctor on duty, wouldn't he not be the one who could call the shots more than anyone as far as who gets rooms and stuff?
I don't know. Not now.
No. Okay.
No, but back then, I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. But
back
I
then.
think regardless though, I think Candace, this happens to her while he's in his job or whatever. Like it seems like that would be a lawsuit that would be pretty easy for her.
Right?
You would think. But then I also think same goes for the stepdaughter. If like, could the
Yeah, I don't
stepdaughter not
know.
also have like a case to make against, maybe not against the hospital, but against the police? Like he's been doing it. He was accused of it and yeah, I don't know. But then again, he tricked them. So I don't know
I was
if
going to say the obstruction probably cleared him of any sort of
like
lawsuit
cleared
like
the
that.
the RCMP or whatever. But
Right.
yeah. And then
I don't know.
and then I also think like maybe not to say that this nurse did anything wrong, but the nurse who noticed his vein felt unusual and that the blood looked dark and not fresh. That's where my mind would be going. I'd be like, I'm suing everybody involved in this, the hospital, the police, the nurse he was able to trick. Not to
Are you
say
from the
that
States?
I think so, yeah. No, and then
Yeah,
of course I'm
no.
suing Schneeberger because it's, he probably had some money too. But I haven't really found much information about things like that happening. And maybe that's another part of the difference between the early 90s and 2023, where I think Canadians are more litigious now than they would have been back in the 90s. But
there could have been a statute of limitations or
yeah, because
whatever.
I guess by the time the accusations against him came from the stepdaughter, it was 5 years after Candace's case.
And then the trial was 7 years.
Yeah.
92 to 99. What is that? 7 years?
7, 8, 9. Yes.
Perfect.
Man, but this is a brutal one, and it's shocking that this isn't well known. Although if you Google it, there's a lot of coverage by like bloggers, YouTubers, writers and stuff.
I was surprised.
Not so much mainstream though. I haven't found I've only found I think like 4 or 5 articles even about this guy.
Well, and I'm surprised it hasn't been like made into like a large Hollywood movie, because it sounds like a movie.
It does. Well, it was made into a movie.
Yes.
I think the movie is called I Accuse, and it's a Canadian made for, I think, CBC. Maybe it's a made for TV thing. How far into the movie I Accuse did you make it?
I got, I think, 21 minutes in.
And what was
I was like, this isn't for me. Yeah. Well, it's just because it was the last thing I watched too. Mm-hmm. So all through, I'm like, that's wrong. that's embellished. That's not right.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of driving scenes and a lot of field scenes. And I'm like, I live here. I'm fine.
See this shit again. Yeah.
Exactly.
So the movie I Accuse is kind of like a dramatization based on his story. I think if anyone was going to watch anything, I'd say the Forensic Files episode is like 20 minutes. It includes interviews with Candace. I think Dr. John Schneeberger's ex-wife, Lisa, may have appeared in it. The police investigators appeared in it. And I'll include links to it in the podcast episode description for people who want to see it. And it also includes some shots of him actually giving blood where you get a chance to see the fake vein and stuff. But man, I've never heard of another case anything like this.
No.
As far as the trickery.
Well, and that's why it's so shocking. It's not more well known and talked about. Mm-hmm. And just the injustice of his sentencing. Ugh.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But we usually wrap this up with asking what you have coming up next. But I'm going to instead ask, what did you release this week? Why don't you tell us about you? This is kind of like a collab because we're doing the podcast, but you covered this as well on YouTube.
I did. I just released an episode about Schneeberger on Tuesday. That's on my YouTube channel. That's the only place it is. But yeah, it's like a 20-minute video and we kind of deep dive into the case and talk about it.
You do an episode every Tuesday on your YouTube channel. What's coming next?
I'm going to do, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Lost Boys of Pickering. So that inspired me to do 2 more Lost Boys from Caledon, Ontario, Eric Larsfolk and John McCormick Jr. These boys just vanished off of the McCormick property in 1981 and have never been seen or heard from since. So
2 boys vanished from, is there any like kind of prevailing theory?
Their dad was kind of an asshole.
Oh.
The prevailing theory is they were killed, but there's been multiple searches and nothing's ever been found.
Interesting.
So yeah, so that's what I'm going to talk about next week.
Awesome. All right. Well, Madelayne, we'll start wrapping this up. We'll be back with another episode next week.
Well, I'm looking very forward to it.
All right. Well, Madelayne, always a pleasure to discuss very displeasurable stories with you.
I like the way you put that. That is, yeah. I agree. Thank you for having me.
A pleasant nightmare.
Yeah.
All right.
That's perfect.
I want to thank you for joining Madelayne and I for this episode of Nighttime. As I've mentioned in the episode, I'll include links in the episode's description to both the documentary about Schneeberger that we referenced and to Madelayne's video covering this case. Now, with that said, I'm going to start wrapping up this episode, but before I do, let me give some thanks. First, a big thanks to Monty Datta, who contributed the music for this episode. A shout out to LJ from the Dystopian Simulation podcast, who provides my intro and outro voiceovers. And lastly, but most importantly, a massive thank you to every one of you listening to Nighttime, as without your interest and your support, Nighttime would be as pointless as it would be impossible. And on that topic of support, let me thank the newest subscribers to the Nighttime Podcast premium feed. Colin, Scythia, Pearl, and Richard, thank you for going premium. And for anyone else who'd like to support the show but can't do it by way of a premium feed subscription, you can give the show a pat on the back by simply sharing this episode on social media and letting your like-minded friends know about the work we're doing here. If you have story ideas, if you want to give feedback on the show, or if you'd like to contribute a voice memo to be aired and responded to in an upcoming episode, you can do all that and more at nighttimepodcast.com. I hope to hear from you. But until then, take care of each other, hug your loved ones tight, and let me know if you see anything weird.
The Nighttime Podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Jordan Bonaparte.